Hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Helping the Brave. Let's bring in our guest today, Doug Katz. How you doing, Doug?
I'm doing great, Ed. How are you?
I can't complain. I'm still on the right side of dirt, as I heard from somebody
I
yesterday. I
like
was
that.
like, that's
I
a
like
good
that.
statement. Yeah, I'm gonna have to steal that from you. Luckily, it wasn't on a podcast, so there is no record of it. So
Right.
I'll have to get rid. I clicked on there. That works. All right. So, Doug, this is the only question I ask. Everything is, what service did you join and why?
I was the Army, and it was because I didn't get into the Naval Academy. I actually had wanted to be a Marine, and I visited the Naval Academy summer thing, but my congressman he had already nominated someone for there, so I got the West Point one, and I ended up in the Army.
Well, if you're at West Point, you're going to go in the Army, right?
Right. Well, when I was picking which academy,
Right,
it was like, okay, if you go to Navy, you can be a Marine, and that was my
right.
goal. And then I ended up in the Army, which actually was a better service for me, frankly.
Yeah, the funniest thing about that is I had no idea that Naval Academy also meant you could be a Marine
Yep.
until I watched the Army Navy game,
Right.
probably 2 years into it. And I was telling somebody this on a podcast 3.5 years ago with a bunch of us, and the guy was on there. He spit out as he was drinking his stuff, like laughing because he was like, "How could you not know that?" I'm like, "I was born dirt road, I was
Right.
living
Right.
dirt road poor. I had no idea what was going on with everything. I
Right.
had no
Right.
idea." Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't have known if I hadn't gone to their summer session as a high schooler, and that's when I was like, "Oh, cool, that looks really, really fun." And but listen, the first time I saw West Point was rolling through the gate. I had not visited it, so it was by circumstance a better thing to do, though.
Now, because Air Force has their own academy, right?
They do,
Okay.
and so does Coast Guard. My daughter's actually at Coast Guard. She's a senior there right now.
But we're talking military.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah, I hear you. They
Gray
call
water,
themselves puddle pirates or something like that.
gray water Navy or something like that.
Yeah, you know what though? They've got a cutter now that's armored like a frigate. I mean, they've got some pretty up armored stuff.
Well, they have to because of all the drug stuff that they
Yeah,
run into and all
right,
that stuff that they run. I mean, some of them are really bad, and some are like, we'll just move on from here. I don't want to get into trouble, but
right,
I mean, you've seen the video where the guy's beating on the sub to get in there and you're
right,
like, wow, that's a badass. But
right.
then you have other people who that's just, you have it in all military.
Yep,
You know,
yep,
yeah.
yep.
All right. So you went to West Point, did your time. What did you do once you graduated?
I got commissioned into the artillery, and did my time at OBC in Oklahoma, and then moved to the Fourth ID, where I was a unique role. I was the division counterfire officer, so it was basically targeting their artillery, the bad guys, where most lieutenants go to other than gun batteries or out in fire support. And then I did some fire support time as well as time as an intelligence officer. The artillery is the only one who have their own intelligence officers. So I spent the last part of my career doing that.
And how long were you in?
I was in from 93 to 98. Even though it was a time they were drawing down, I felt that I owed my 5 years back, so I didn't want to leave. And the skiing in Colorado is really good. So those two things together kept me in.
Why did you transition out?
I look at it now as a mistake. I should have stayed in longer. Around 1998, the economy was really, really good, and there had been a drawdown. So there were a lot of majors, senior captains, not really lieutenant colonels. When they were riffing a bunch of people, these people had given a lot of time. So you had officer senior you saying, "Don't put your time in, get out because I got screwed over." You've got recruiters saying you can double your salary, and I ended up thinking, "Hey, it all makes sense." I didn't think about the fact that they let too many people out. So a lot of my friends that stayed in had great careers, and after moving to corporate America and realizing it wasn't my thing, with all the drawbacks, I think being in the military would have been better, at least for, maybe another 5 years to do a battery command and stuff like that.
Yeah, my son's in right now. He's a airborne medic who just gave that up, and he was in the cavalry. But come to find
Right.
out, I guess they're getting rid of that now.
Right.
And now he's actually deployed. But I'm just saying he enjoys it. He's at the
Right.
point where he's like, he's going to stay in. And when I went in, I had no idea what I was going to do.
Right.
Uh, then I realized in the Navy, if you become an officer, because I got my bachelor's and master's while I was working on while I was in it, it's like you're a line officer on a ship.
Right.
You're the fact, for you to get a land-based position is going to be really hard. And I'm like, I'm not, yes, I joined the Navy thinking I might have to be on a ship, but I didn't go on a ship at all. I visited a
Right.
couple of people on a ship, and I even picked my specialty so that was not on ships, so I didn't have to go
No,
on it.
listen, you know what? As much as it sucked being out in the cold and the elements and being hungry all the time and all that, like I'm not a great swimmer. I can swim, but I'm not a great swimmer. But two, I really took to sort of the leadership of people, and
Mhm.
I really loved that about the Army. And that's what would have probably the Marines were very similar, the Marines I've met. So I think that was where I love that connection, and that's really helped it kind of in the entrepreneurial thing too.
Right. Well, as many people I've been talking to, about 50% of veterans are business owners. And so it's
Yeah.
really amazing how many of us are business owners. And so just so you know, I was stationed at Camp Pendleton, which is with the
Oh, yeah.
Marines. And so
Yeah.
Marines are who my people are. I connect more with Marines than I do Navy people. Um,
Absolutely.
and that's just because where I was stationed at. Now, if I would have been stuck going to a naval thing afterwards, I would have been miserable.
And it's interesting. The one thing for me and I didn't understand it later until I talked to people who are in the Navy, but the line between enlisted NCOs and then officers was much more defined. And when you're in the field and you're with your guys, it was much more of for me, it felt like a cohesive team versus what other people described.
Right.
And I just don't that's really what gave me energy. Like I really enjoy that.
Yeah, so for us, I didn't have that. Well, I mean, so I was in physical therapy, and I told people when I was in that part of it, it was like being MASH. There
Right.
is that
Right.
separation, but there isn't that separation, right? My
Right.
department heads were like, yes, they were officers, but they really didn't act like officers to a
Right.
point where, and I was a guy who pushed the envelope when it came to the hair and everything else. I knew my codes, I knew everything. And department head's like, if they got a problem with what I have no problem with what you do and
Right.
where your stuff is. If they have a problem with you, have them come see me, because we
Right.
get stopped and they try, what are you? And I'm like, I know the regs. You want to check
Right.
it?
Right.
I keep
Right.
it
Right.
exactly
Right.
where it's at.
Right.
Leave me alone.
Right.
And so it's important to have that separation. But see, what we had is we also had the Marine officers, young officers come in, and they're a lot more yes sir, no sir. You got to say,
Really?
they want you to call them sir, like you would nobody's business. They want to tell you what to do as a enlisted.
That's
And
interesting. That's
yeah,
interesting.
we know, and this is not, I mean, this is you run into.
Right.
I'm not saying they're all that way, but this is
Right.
what you're, and so what we would do is we know in our thing, we can call them by their rank and not say sir to them. And that would piss them off more than anything else, because their people have to call them by say sir.
Right. And I think that they're rigid. And my
And for a
guys still
reason.
always called me sir, lieutenant, or whatever. But I think it was just sort of the interaction. Like when I hear that there was like a different mess for like officers and enlisted and things like that, it's like, sometimes my guys ate and I didn't, right? It's just it was just a very different philosophy. And I think both work well because that's what makes it work on a ship or whatever.
Right.
But it wasn't my thing. And again, for me, it seemed like that rigidity was very, very prevalent once I got out. Everyone was like, "Oh, it's going to be just like the Army. You just get paid more." And it was
Mm.
the worst parts of the Army. And yes, you got paid more, but it was an endurance question. Like, can you endure the BS because you're getting paid enough, as opposed to really enjoying the job?
So when you got out, what did you do?
The first job I got was working for a company that made rail castings for the rail industry. And it was interesting. I was in their international group, and because other countries had taken copies of the rail castings that company made, there was a slight difference in the tolerances to make it work. And at that time, like companies like GE were hiring a ton of junior military officers when they were getting out, and this company sold to GE Railcar, so they hired a lot of military people as well. What was interesting is they just didn't know how to utilize them. So I was only in that job for about 18 months, and I loved it. Like, you could see people pouring steel. Like, it was really cool. And then I ended up in the telecom industry through a military connection. So I can't talk enough about how great the military connections are, because I was quickly able to get into a growing company in the telecom equipment sector, and did some marketing and operations there. And then when the telecom industry tanked, I moved into lending, where I was for about 22, 23 years, until moving more into this entrepreneurial world.
So you were into mortgages?
I was a mortgage guy, yeah.
I'm a
I
mortgage
went
guy.
through the '08 thing, and I went through all the different machinations.
Yeah, so I'm a mortgage guy still.
Oh, really? Okay.
I own my own company, owned it for years, and had partners in the past, and
Right.
I got into it when I was younger, like 28, 29.
Right. And like,
I rode the 98. So I
right.
got in 94, got out. So I got in 91, got out in 93, got back in 94, and then stayed in it ever since.
Right. And like, so I keep my license up to date. There's a West Point grad who owns a company where I keep my license, and they handle the business, but I'm just not actively seeking it. And I've also been in the business use residential, right? So when like rental loans that weren't Fannie Freddie loans, when that started growing, I was with a startup doing that. And then I was doing that on my own for a little while, but the market's changing so much. That's what really provided the incentive and inspiration to try some other different things, because I just felt it would be a slow death.
Well, no, it's the last 2 years has been like the worst 2
Oh yeah,
years
it's terrible.
in history of. I've been in business. I mean, I rode the 2008, and that was bad, but this is worse,
Right.
because you have, at least at that point, we had people still buying homes and doing things and and the difference now is people just aren't selling.
Right.
And because why do I want to leave my 2% or 3%?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
I call it an abusive relationship, because I got people who need 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, who was like, I can't, I'm just going to stay in this house, and they're going to deal with it. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
kind of like our parents did, right? A lot of
Yeah.
our parents were like, we're going to stay in this house, and this is the house forever. And they're going to grow and leave. We're not going to get into a bigger house and scale back down, which other people have done over the
Right.
years.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I already think, like, mine's a multi-generational house. When we bought this house like 3 or 4 years ago, it had 2 master suites, and we did that because we were taking care of my dad. And I could see it being a great rotational asset, where, age-wise, there'll be a point where one of my kids might want it. And hard assets right now really make sense. So I think it's something we want to hold on to. And frankly, in the lending side, everybody's talking about AI, and frankly, I do look at lending as one of those areas where it really makes sense to use AI for a lot of the frontline engagement with the client, because AI, if it's done right, wouldn't discriminate. It would ask the right questions. It would provide good guidance to people who needed help. And the deals that need people doing them would be funneled to a human being who can take a part in that interaction. Like, it just, to me, it makes sense. It would be whether it would lower costs for the people getting the loan.
Yeah, see, I don't run. So I've been in this forever. I don't run into the discrimination part like other people talk about. I haven't seen that myself personally, and I'm in
Right.
California, where I've done it everywhere. I think money's green, period. I
Well,
don't see.
and
Yeah.
that's a good point. Like, I haven't seen it, but if you can make the models perfect or close to it, then the regulation becomes a lot easier.
But the problem is the models are made by humans.
Oh, exactly. Yep.
Okay, so
Right.
you can see how skewed they were in the beginning towards one way or another
Yep.
when they first came out with what you asked it, to tell you one way or another. They've gotten better, but see, I think it's going to be a complete opposite. I think there's going to be
Really?
some information that people will use for AI, and I think because of the fact that people can be faked into stuff so easily, and you have no idea if it's a real person, they're going to want to come in and shake your hand and wanting to see you.
Interesting.
I think it's going to be a whole resurgent back the opposite way, to where people are so worried. I mean, I had a guy call me yesterday. He couldn't get logged into his account, and I'm sure it's because he never set it up. But he was
Right, right,
freaking out,
right, right.
thinking
No,
that
I hear you.
someone stole his mortgage and stole his property, because he hears all that information about title lock and all that. I go, you understand, title lock just means they send you a little thing that says somebody recorded something on your title. You
Yeah,
can do
like
the same.
you're better off just getting a little home equity line just to sit on your title that you never use because nobody could ever steal your title.
Well, it's just, or just get the notifications from the county. You go down,
Right,
check every so often if something's
right,
been recorded on your property. They don't stop it from happening. It's not like the credit lock where
right,
someone can't run your credit. This
right,
is different. And they
right.
don't sell it that way. And I'm like, you don't understand. And this is not supposed to be a show about mortgages, people.
No, I know,
This
but you know what?
But I'm
It's
just saying, I
interesting.
think it's going to go opposite, because we were locked down for so long. We want to see people again. And then with this AI, people are getting, it's going to get to a point where you're not going to tell whether it's a human or not. And there, people are going to go, I don't want to be taken advantage of.
Yeah, but see, so I look at it, and you'd have that first contact, and the client starts talking. A model could recognize a language and have that whole, like, so you would immediately be able to serve a broader group. And then once you're at the point where you've been vetted, oh, we're going to get you over to a senior loan person. They don't know what's going on. All of a sudden, now the people who really could be served are being helped appropriately by human beings. And frankly, I look at it that way and I say, that's a better service to them, because you're not wasting time with people who have, like, a 400 FICO, and they're like, you know what I'm talking about. So,
No, I understand that. But so I understand what you're saying, but I also think it's going to get to a point where it's not going to matter whether you know a language or not.
oh
You're
wow,
you're going to have an earpiece that just,
yeah, yeah, no,
you're
that's valid.
we're going to be Star Trek, right? You never,
Yes,
automatic communicator, not needing to know the language, which is going to be sad, because then people aren't going to learn languages. But what I mean is, it doesn't matter. Are you Spanish speaking? It doesn't matter.
right.
You're going to be able to communicate that quick, that fast with everybody. Because I find that a lot of the times the smaller groups and the certain people who only speak certain languages actually take more advantage of their own people than other people do. And I think if you have to be
Yeah,
careful,
there are people who leverage the affinity for the dark reasons.
unfortunately.
I've got an ability to lie to this person, and like the dark side of the force kind of thing, right? Where they can say, hey, I'm one of I'm and yeah, I'm sure it goes on.
No, because I use it now for a lot of the stuff I do, podcasting and editing and everything I do. Create my daily, like the show for today about you. I dropped it into AI about. I created a GPT that I just drop in your name, and what podcast I'm doing, and then the different links to different websites or web pages about you, and it creates my show for me.
Right, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah. And so I see that, and for letters and communicating with people, yeah, I see that with, and regular text little stuff. But people hate bots. People hate when they go to a website and it's a
right,
bot. They want a real person. It's going to get to a point where that bot's going to be smarter than a real person. And I
right.
think you're right to a certain point where I can drop in someone's credit report now after I take out all the social security numbers and everything else, people. So don't worry. And it will tell me exactly what this person needs to do to get his FICO score up above. We used to have to do what ifs.
Oh yeah, no, yeah,
What
that
ifs.
was, yeah, it was terrible.
Right. Well, now you don't. You just use Chat GPT, drop it in there, and it'll look at it and tell you exactly what to do.
That's
Um,
interesting. I have not heard of anyone using it that way. I tend to use
because
it.
I'm ahead of the game, man.
That is actually really brilliant. That is really, really brilliant.
And
I'm gonna call the guy who owns a company that I do loans at after this and tell him you should give it a try.
it works. You have to edit, so you can drop your PDF into ChatGPT. So go into that thing and delete every social security number in there.
Right. Well, you know what's interesting? What I'm actually hearing that's great for your listeners and viewers is, if you're listening, get your free credit report and run it through there. Like, why
Yeah.
use Credit Karma? You could do your own credit analysis. That's brilliant. I hadn't even thought of doing that.
A chat people, I always tell people it's only limited by what you ask it to do.
Right. No, that's
So,
because I've been using it really focused in, like, the creation of this product and things like that. And I'll write with it, but I will write with it I'll talk back and forth. Like I tell people, I try and kind of cultivate a Tony Stark, a
Mhm.
Jarvis type thing where it is conversational, because it also starts to understand how you talk and think, which whatever, that could scare people. I understand it. It's here to stay, whatever. But the output sounds like me, right? And I've written the article because I'm dictating, but it goes, oh, I understand your style. And it's pretty amazing stuff. It really is.
Well, I wrote a book called Financial Freedom: Building Personal Wealth Through Home Ownership. So I dropped my book into my Chat GPT and told it to learn my voice. So it writes everything I do in my voice.
Right. Right. I mean, it is amazing. It is
You just
really,
tell it
it
to
is.
learn to remember this. And like if you have it do an email and you help people, you can tell it, someone who used Chat GPT, it says, "Hello, how are you doing?" Those stupid first lines that's in there. I told it, don't ever use a stupid line like that again.
I did that and it keeps bringing it back. And I'm like, dude, cut it out. Stop doing it, baby.
No, just say, do not ever, and it will, and you'll see it like save that information at the top.
Right.
You'll say save, like it won't do it again, and it won't. But again, using GPTs of chat where you create your own prompts to do things, because I do the same thing for a daily show. There are separate things that you can do. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
GPTs. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I created so many of them. Like in my industry, when I have to do a letter explanation about something, right from the underwriter, I just grab what the underwriter asking, drop it in there, and sometimes I tell it what it is, and sometimes I just let it tell me what the answer is.
That's awesome. That what, you're one of the few people I've talked to who's really attacking it that way, and it's interesting because I use it a lot for for writing the business plan for the product we're doing now.
Mhm.
I'm going into an accelerator in March, and it is that same kind of thing. Hey, what would an investor want to see here?
Mhm.
And it knows how to put that together. And in fact, one of the accelerators has AI built into their deliverables now, which is amazing, right? Like
Mhm.
that's if people aren't getting on board that program, I think they're really going to fall behind.
If you don't use AI, you're going to be so far behind. It's ridiculous. You have to do it. I use this. I mean, I use it for everything, and it's in everything now. I mean, it's on your phone constantly. It's on every. I don't search anything on Google anymore.
I've started switching to that, and because Google does seem like you're talking to like someone who has no idea what's going on that's getting paid, right? I mean, it's
Well, what I mean, so I had a blind, like a mini blind I couldn't find a part for. I took a picture of it, dropped that picture into ChatGPT, told it to find it for me and tell me where to go to get it. And it told me that within 2 minutes where to find it located. And
right.
I couldn't find it on Google. I Googled it because I didn't ask the right question. I didn't ask the right thing. But with
Well,
ChatGPT,
and
yeah,
they're incented to give you different feedback. Like ChatGPT right now isn't trying to figure out how am I going to get someone paid the most or who paid me the most to show up there. So, it makes sense. It really does. And I agree with you. People are going to fall behind, and frankly, there's never been a better time to start a business. I mean, I'm sure
no.
you're seeing that because you're doing multiple things that you probably couldn't have done otherwise before without that battlefield multiplier.
If I tell people what I do, they go, "How the hell are you doing all that?" Because I mean, so I have my radio show. I also have a daily podcast from the radio show that we do 5 days a week. Plus, I do Helping the Brave, record 2 episodes and drop one a week. Plus, I do an Inner Edison podcast, 2 episodes a week, drop one a week. I also do another podcast with another guy Tuesdays and Thursdays, which is an actual live. Plus, I do
Wow.
lending. Plus, I'm starting a veterans benefits company because what I found out through doing this and going back to get my benefits, what a nightmare it is to get work through that system. And
Right.
VSOs are overworked. They don't get, there's no incentive for them to bust their butt. I mean, and there's no knocking on them. I'm not knocking them at all. But
Right. Right.
when I got out, they denied and gave me 10%. I tried to go back in the late 90s and they ignored me, and then early 2000. And now in the last 8 years, it's gotten a lot easier for you to go back and get your benefits than it was before.
Right. I had a
Yeah.
fantastic VSO who really understood the issues, and I agree with you. 100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, I went through a ranger I interviewed on here, and he's a great guy doing a great job for me. But I'm like, okay, there's so many millions of us. If you just look at the ones who have 10% disability up to 80 to 90, there's millions of those people who need help to get their benefits that they got denied because the person who put it in for them just didn't put it in right.
Right. Right.
And that's not counting the 200,000 that gets out a year. And that's not counting the, what do we have? 18 million of us right now that could have some type of a benefit that they need.
Right. No, I am a big evangelist on that, because the key is, and sometimes I think people don't necessarily, is as you sort of move up that, it's not just the check you're getting, it unlocks certain other benefits.
Oh, huge.
So, yeah,
Educational.
there's a lack of information.
Yeah, and that's my big push, because helping the brave, when I started it, I wanted to turn it into a whole place of whatever I found out you could go to go get done, and that we talked about. And then
Right.
I see the benefits side of it is just huge, because people don't understand what you get when you get your benefits, and what that helps for your family, and how it can change the whole trajectory. And I mean, it's huge difference for everybody.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. And just the for the people who don't have the benefit and then are able, if they've been denied and then they pick that up, this is where the ability for you to check that disabled veteran box when you're applying for a job or things like that, because that's just very favorably considered.
You're protected class.
Yeah, yeah.
But not only that, I mean, the people don't do it because they think that means they can't get certain jobs. They can't get security clearances. If they see, when I got out, PTSD was a bad thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You could not talk about it. You did not want anybody to know if you had it, because you couldn't get anything. And now it's really the opposite way. However, I'm going back through, because I don't want to get into everything, but the amount, how hard it is to get into the system to get help is ridiculous.
For PTSD or just for everything?
PTSD.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's
everything else. Oh my God. I never used the VA system. 2 months ago was the first time, because I had Kaiser with my wife. I still do, but I thought, I'm going to go through this because I hear the horror stories. I want to see how bad it is. You've seen the pictures in the past. And I'm like, I got to say, for the medical side of it, amazing, fast. For the PTSD side, horrible.
I totally agree.
PTSD side, horrible. Canceling appointments.
Oh, interesting.
Can't get in to get your first appointment, and then you finally get in for your first appointment, then you go for your second appointment, they have to reschedule it, and it's not with a doctor, it's with a social worker, and then from the social worker you got to go for behavioral health, and then you can go over to the PTSD side. Do you want to do inside VA or outside VA? I can see how people commit suicide who really need this, who are at that point.
Yeah, see, didn't have to go through that channel. I agree with you on the medical side. I just think generally that whole organization, and it's interesting, right? Because you have these veterans who got out of the largest organization, right? The Department of Defense, and they knew how to navigate that, right? And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, wait, I'm dealing with a big bureaucracy. What do I do? And it's like, you know how to do it. And I make a lot of use, at least on the medical side, of the patient advocates. Stuff gets done. Stuff, and if you're not an ass to people, they really want to help you. So I think generally, but it does vary. I was closer to the city at one point, and I found I'm getting better treatment in sort of a less urban area, because I just think it's tasked less than the one that was serving more people.
Where are you living now?
I live in a small town called Trout Valley, about an hour 15 out of Chicago. The entire town used to be the Hertz estate. So it's a really interesting, when he owned Yellow Cab and there were the cab wars in Chicago, this was his estate. And now it's about 290 families. Cool. It's a really cool area. Like, the pool is the pool that was his pool when his mansion was there. That has since burnt down, but it's a really neat place.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because I find, so I'm in Modesto, California, which is 203,000 or 210,000. We have a lot of towns around us.
Right.
Our VA clinic is easy, but we also have one that's 20 minutes away, which is supposedly Stockton, but it's not in Stockton, it's outside of it. And that's a 5-story, $15 million facility that we built. And I mean, I can see how certain things like orthopedics, amazing, got but I don't like what they tell me I have to do, which is a total knee replacement, but that's beside the point.
Right. I'm probably a little behind you on that one, but I'm
just saying, but people don't understand all this stuff goes back to your medical, to your service history, right?
Yes.
how much weight did we carry when we were packing and rucking and all the
Yep.
stuff we did and marching and I was patient care, so I picked up so many patients, and ambulance driver, I picked up so many so I was corpsman, then went to physical therapy school. When I got back at Camp Pendleton, we pulled duty as ambulance drivers and the EMT in the back,
Right.
and it wasn't just ambulance driver taking people out, it was major accidents and other stuff, and so
Right.
there's a
Right.
lot of
No, I
stuff that
totally hear you.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we deal with that I wasn't in during combat. I missed that by like 3 days, thank
Oh,
God. But
wow.
but so when you're non-combat, a lot of us think, okay, well, I'm not combat, I don't have any issues. That's not the case. You can have
Oh,
issues.
no,
Yeah.
hey, you were on the wall during that time, right? And, especially, like, a as you were talking about some of the stuff you do as a medic, as an example, and you're not doing it under the perfect circumstances, right? There's boulders and all kinds of stuff that you're trying to walk around, rolling your ankles. It's an inherently dangerous thing, and that's why so little people volunteer to do it, right? Like, and I do feel, though, that generally veterans are held in such high esteem right now. The one thing I worry about is this younger generation of veterans being so isolated. And I'm part of a couple of veteran organizations here in Northwest Illinois. And one of the things we do for one of the, like, Memorial Day, we do this big flag thing where it's basically a cemetery, temporary one, for any of the Illinois residents in the military who died from 1991 to the present. And each one is tagged. So you'll see guys will come out and visit their buddies because you can't go to Arlington, and you talk about joining, and they're just not into joining things. And I think that it's really, really frightening to me that this community, I belong to a VFW, I belong to an American Legion. I just think it's important that, because they fight for veterans' rights, but you don't see these young guys. And not only losing that advocacy, but that camaraderie, when you could go to a place and there's people shared experience there. I mean, a lot of these places have open to the public because they have to. And I just hope that trend changes, because part of the reason these guys aren't getting the benefits they need is they're not sitting in a place where there's a lot of vets going, hey, have you talked to this person, or have you done this? They're just not exposing themselves to those resources.
Right, and that's why I think, but also the social media aspects now, because if you talk about this, next thing your phone's going to be blown up with Instagram, and when you're on there, all the stuff about the different places to go to get help.
Right, right.
But the problem I run into is a lot of these companies charge a lot of money. You're on your first check. And
Right.
then I ran into different companies who charge differently. And I'm like, okay, that's why I'm starting the one I'm doing, because I want to help so many vets get their benefits, and we need to get the word out. And I
Right.
started a thing last year called Operation Firewalk, which is we did a 2-day event where you learned motivational speakers kind of thing. And then end of the night, you actually walked across coals, just like a total
Wow.
Tony Robbins event. We have
Right.
another one coming up May 3rd, 2025 here in Modesto. Same thing. It's going to be two different. I got a military person, and then I have a first responder, because I allow first responders and military to come. And the reason is I relate more to a first responder with what I see and
Right.
what they're going through, because they're committing suicide at the same rate we are. And that's why they need help also. So I'm like, we need to open this up to everybody.
Yeah, and it really is a shared mission-based, duty-based kind of value system. And I think that, anyone who we can save who fundamentally volunteered for any of all of us, then it's important. And that, frankly, that's why I've gotten involved with a couple of these different organizations. Is I'm like you, I never served in combat, and I deal with a lot of, like, Vietnam vets, and I actually served, if you count West Point, 9 years. A lot of these guys did 1 year, but it's a very different thing. And I feel,
Yeah.
because I was never in harm's way the same way, that my chance to give back, is through these volunteer organizations, or helping other veterans who want to start businesses or whatever I can help with.
Right. And my goal with the Operation Firewalk is just to give back to get people past their limiting beliefs and fire and fear and all that stuff. And I didn't know how much it was going to help until a couple of vets came up to me, and they were dealing with major PTSD, which I didn't know. And in the last year, they've actually majorly made changes and come to the other side of it because of walking across coals, which, so that's what we're doing. This year is only going to be probably about 230 people be at this event, but the goal is to grow
Wow.
it over the next few years. Because last year when we did it, it was a 2-day event. The second day was only supposed to be for veterans. The first day was supposed to be for everybody else putting it on, but it ended up blending because people asked, "Can I come to the Friday one instead of Saturday?" Because I
Wow.
can't make a Saturday. So Friday was way more than we expected. Saturday was not as many as we expected because we kind of had a rain during the day. So people thought, "Oh my God, they're not going to put it on." No, it's outside, and
I
it
would
was not.
rather walk on hot coals when it's raining, personally. I'm just gonna say.
Well, that's fine, but it stopped by 4. We're not gonna walk till 8 because you gotta have the
Right.
dark. They gotta see the colors of the coals to make sure it's
Right.
the temperature of them. And the guy that is running that part of it, if you're anywhere with Podmatch, he's on here, David Albin. He worked for
Okay.
Tony Robbins for 20 years as the
Okay.
fire, and he was the fire captain at the end when he left. So he knows what to do, and he's
Right.
amazing at that part. So
But you know what? And it's good. What it seems like is you're giving a lot of these guys back kind of a purposeful thinking and, reconnecting with that. And that's, when I talk to these guys, because of that one cemetery thing, we'll sit watch, right? So you have someone pull up at 2 or 3 in the morning visiting a fallen comrade, and they'll hang out. And there is kind of this lack of purpose, right? Like it's such
mhm.
a purposeful lifestyle when you serve, and then you get out and people don't give a crap really about anything, right? Like there's not, it's really, really hard to find something that you can believe in at the same level that you did in the military.
Right. And that's what you gotta find. You gotta find that
Yeah. Oh,
purpose.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of us to get into business because that's our new purpose and other stuff to go
It
move
is, and you
forward.
can bring vets along for the ride, right? Like, and so a lot of my team are vets. We're really trying to lean into that as we can as we grow the Nulu knife business, but the other ones as well.
Right. Because I mean, a lot of vets don't understand what is out there for helping them build their business. And just I know you said this earlier about I use Chat GPT to write my business plan, marketing plan, and everything for my new business, which was shocking how easy.
Right,
Because I remember the first time I did it when I had my master's, when I got out of that program, it was like
right.
that was a lot of work. But also, back then, but now it's like, okay, I know exactly what I want to say, but it just helps me write it so much easier. And then you can go, okay, I want to change it to this way. And who is my perfect client? You can figure that stuff out a lot faster now.
Absolutely. Well, and you
And
could pivot a lot easier,
right,
right?
because
Like if something's not working, you could say, "Hey, my business plan. Here's what we're seeing. What do you think?" Like it's just so powerful. And I actually use ChatGPT, and sometimes when I'm writing something, I'll take from ChatGPT and I'll go into Claude and I'll say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And you got to be very specific on how you want to edit it. But the stuff that comes out is really, really good because the ChatGPT was helping write in your voice and you edited it, but then a disinterested editor, right? One who knows nothing can look and say, "Hey, you could tighten a couple of these things up." It is really amazing.
yeah. And then what's nice about ChatGPT, last thing, but I want to get in your knife company is you can create projects now where
Oh,
under there's a project. And so I did a VA disability company. Underneath there, I keep everything that I've run and learned and do stuff.
now
Yeah.
can you tell it to access other broader conversations or no?
You can have so if you create GPTs, you can daisy chain those GPTs, meaning that so it's a at sign and whatever that GPT name is. And the reason you do that is say you create a website, you're doing something for a website for something, and then now you created that. Now you want to create all the text messages and emails that would come at different parts. You can just daisy chain that in. You don't have to retell it everything. And then
Oh,
you
that's
want
cool.
and then if you want to create ads, right from an ad GPT you can daisy chain it. So it already knows all the information. It's just passing it through all three things. And
And
you're
it's not getting confused with other stuff.
correct.
That's
So
really
you
cool.
can do it. It's again, it's just how you clarify and do certain things. The reason why I use projects is a lot of times I don't know about you, but I create a lot of stuff and you'll have to go down. What was that? 6 months, 60 days ago, 6 months
Yeah.
ago? Yeah.
My GPT is a mess. I'm almost thinking of like starting over with it because now I know how to use it better, and it's like an older email address. Um, but no, it is truly amazing, and this is why I think people have less excuses now, right? I mean, ultimately, um, it can do everything you can't, and the resources. I've used a couple of military focused accelerators that are all free, and those two things together, yes, businesses fail, but your chance of being successful goes up so much when you've got all this support. And I just don't think a lot of them know that the support's out there.
Right. And then back to your, so I think the whole thing about businesses fail and how many percentage of business fail is kind of a BS number.
Oh, I
Um,
agree. I
yeah,
completely agree.
because they talk about, I mean, if you take out all the things they first talk about, they're not even started businesses. They just, I think it was going to start a business, and they pull a business license and it doesn't do anything. That's a business fail. Right. I
Right,
mean,
right,
yeah, yeah,
right. You know, and frankly, that statistic, I used to do a lot of lending in the divorce space. And when I really peeled it back, you're like, everyone was like 50% of marriages end in divorce. You're like, okay, but when does it end in it? Like, you're worried about how many divorces are going on in the calendar year, let's say, or the fiscal year that you're targeting. You know, it adds up like 2 or 3% of the population. But you've got these people who are thinking, well, wait a minute, it's 50% of the population. It's not, right. It's your market at that point. And I think that a lot of the statistics about business are the same way. And people are really trying to stack the deck for the veterans to make them less and less likely to be in that percentage.
yeah, I agree. And that's why I actually wrote a book, how to handle real estate during a divorce.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, so that one's coming out. So it's
Awesome.
just stuff that you run into that you need, because people. What happened is I was on a podcast about divorce, and somebody reached out, and so I sent my book. But I'm like, this is not really. My book was not set up for that. My book is to set up to how to get into a house and then
Right.
how to build to go forward, not what to do with it. So I quickly did some changes to edit it, and next thing I know, I have this book, and now I got to upload it to Amazon and everything else to get it out there.
I will say, when I was in that space, one of the things that I did was I got my mediation credentials. And that was probably, I think I did it. It was an online thing. Um, but it was really, really good. And wasn't terribly expensive. And I found that for when I was in that space, it was really good. But I have really taken to being able to use that in a lot of other areas. So it was just like really odd thing where it's like, well, everybody should kind of take this, because all it is understanding someone else's point of view, which makes you a heck of a lot more successful.
Right. So during the 2006 downturn,
Yep.
my wife wanted to go to a life coaching course, right, to get certified for that, and she
Yeah.
asked me if I'd go with her. I'm like, sure, what the heck, it could help me,
Right.
right?
Right. Why not?
What's the worst thing that came out of it? Well, guess what I used it for? Short sale negotiations to
Yeah.
help clients get through. Because during that period of time, instead of doing loans, I did loans, but I did more short sale negotiating for real estate agents and everybody else who didn't have a clue how to deal with these. And there was many a times people are crying and everything else, and I used that what I learned in that course to help them to understand this is only a point right now. It's not your forever.
Right. Right.
And that's what you're just talking about, finding other things to help you, which you don't understand how it's going to help you, and then later it helps you amazing. But we haven't even got into your business at all yet.
Oh, you know what? I love the conversation. So
I was like, we're 42 minutes in this, and we haven't even talked about his knife company. How did you start? So it's how do you pronounce your name? The name?
Nulu.
Nulu.
Yeah. And it is sprung from the Ulu knife. When the Ulu knife was a Inuit knife, it's a the indigenous knife that indigenous people used. And what when I invented it, it was really around, well, why does it kind of work better? So I had my own upper extremity issues. I had taken up knife smithing and couldn't swing a hammer. I also like to cook, couldn't cook. And I was in my shop and I started playing around with like just junk circular saw blades, playing around with some shapes. And it occurred to me that it's all about maximizing the sort of the circumference around the circle, right? Because what makes it work is, and I've got one right here. This is our last prototype before production. If you think of this as a circle and then this as an arc along the circumference, any radius between the center and anywhere on the cutting surface is direct transfer of force. And you can hold it whatever works well for you. So it's really meant to be adaptive in that the cutting action and the geometry is better, but any individual can use it in a way that suits them. So it replaces a lot of knives, but I hate to say it that way. It can accomplish the tasks of a lot of different knives. And as a result, it brings a lot of flexibility to the kitchen for people who need that help.
Right. I see it as a way to not cut yourself as much.
It's interesting because a couple last conversations I was on were talking about for kids, because one thing that very much shaped the development was when we were thinking about disability. And it might have been even sort of going through the military disability process, but it's not binary. You're not disabled or not disabled. And it got me thinking of the time in the Army of task, condition, and standards, right? That's how you were evaluated. If you had to do something, what were you supposed to do, under what conditions, to what standards? Based on that, you can look at tasks and define if someone is fully able-bodied to do it or on some scale of disability, right? Some people will never be able to use a knife. They're completely disabled for that task. Others might need some adaptive help. So we created this thing we call the this model that we call the ability curve, where we look at what's the task and we shaped our market around symptomatic manifestation, right? So you could have MS or osteoarthritis and have grip issues. We can hopefully solve the grip issues by thinking kind of a big Venn diagram. Where do people have the most problems? But it also then brings up kids, right? So if you look at a 10-year-old, a 10-year-old could be completely appropriately coordinated, dexterous, and strong for their age, but to do an adult task, they're disabled because they can't do it at that full capability. So where we're trying to take the discussion is, let's help everybody do this task better. And let's make adaptive design more around, hey, we're really all on this scale, right? Like you think about the autistic spectrum and things, there's been more of a shift to, there's a gray area in understanding where everybody is in something like disability. So that's really shaped how our design and how we talk about it has gone, because we were really leaning into the disabled community, and we're still doing that. But there is some other components of a market, just seniors and other people who don't consider themselves disabled, but really have limitations in the kitchen.
Yeah, but I just see it as it's an easier grip to do things with, the way I watch the videos.
It is.
I think it'd be good for everybody. Because I mean, because when I saw that, I was like, that looks like the same, not the same, but I mean, like the design off of the Alaskan, the one that my son was stationed in Alaska, and we'd go up there, and of course, my wife's like, here, you need this, and then of course, I never used it because I'm sorry, it's just not. I'd rather use a knife differently, but the way I saw this, I could grip it like a regular handle.
Right. Well, and if you think,
and people, if you haven't seen this, go to NUL. So what's your website?
NuluKnives.com.
Yeah, go there, check it out, because it's pretty amazing, and you'll see exactly what we're talking about, because you can't see if you're not watching the video.
So the thing is, the interesting, and you're unique in your open-mindedness. When you talk about AI, like you would look at it and go, I totally get it. When you talk to some people, they'll say, but I want to look like a chef. And the interesting thing about that is, and I'm gonna, this is a knife I'm making for somebody as a gift. I've got to finish with it. But a chef holds a knife like this. And for the people who are just listening, they sort of hold it midway between to get better transfer of force, because it's linear. If you do this, it's just not good. And then the handle becomes weight. And you think about this and you say, okay, I understand why knives are the way they are. It was the ultimate multitasker, because you may have to stab an animal and then clean it and then eat dinner with it's a tool that you use for everything. We don't do that anymore. So that's where we're fighting against some, a paradigm shift that people sometimes will push off against, because they're saying, but I love my whatever $1,000 chef's knife. And I think there's something cool to that. I think it's like when you go to the range and you shoot a cowboy action gun versus like something else, right? There's some nostalgia there, but that's not what you would carry, right? Like there are some limitations to it. So for me, I look at it, and what we're really hoping is that there's sort of the 45 and older sandwich generation people who are taking care of older parents, who the older parents could really use this benefit. And then the sandwich generation caretaker is like, oh, like it's good for me too. But then they have a kid, right? Or maybe they're moving into being a grandparent, and they're like, well, this will work good for kids too. And if we can sort of envelop the entire cutting industry, then if people who are younger only use that kind of knife, then we're really changing how people view work in the like. You shouldn't have to work in the kitchen. It should be about, hey, I want to prepare the meal, but I want to make it so it's not a hassle, because I mean, that's, people are all about sharing meals. Like, I think it's this really primal, seminal thing that connects us with each other, and we need more of that.
Well, I think the best thing about it also is the fact that you don't stab somebody if you accidentally walk into them.
Absolutely. Well, listen,
I'm just saying I run it because I'm thinking about, hunting and everything, even though you use it to cut, if you're a hunter and do what you do,
right.
you can still use the same knife. It works, but you wouldn't
Oh, yeah.
stab somebody or yourself or cut, because how many people drop a knife and it goes on their foot, or they do certain things because they're not paying attention.
You're totally right.
I think you're limiting yourself by just calling it, the disabled. I would just not even say that. I would just say,
Well, you know what? And it's interesting. So our Kickstarter, we did come out because we broke our Kickstarter down to like 60 days. And each week we did like an awareness week. And one was like disabled vets, one was MS, because we wanted to kind of test messaging. And I think what we're finding is, it's almost like when a pharmaceutical company comes up with a drug that solves a couple of different types of conditions, and their marketing messaging, or like some of the insurance companies, you can see they're just messaging to different people. We're sort of pivoting to that thinking, so that that we don't pigeonhole ourselves. But there's also so much innovation that comes out of the disabled community, and what we really hope is we can bring this smart design, nice design, to things that work better for everybody. And what that does is it distributes the cost the right way. So whenever I hear actors interviewed and they're like, well, why did you do a crap movie? And they're like, for a big paycheck, so I can make the movie I want to make. So that kind of thinking, if we look that way and we say, if we can make a more universal product that solves a problem for the disabled community, then we can get rid of the disability tax, because they pay more for everything. But if we can make everybody's cutting better, then great. And the benefit is distributed as well.
And a lot of people don't realize those really nice knives, you got to be really protective of them. You got to make sure, you got to treat them like a very expensive Ferrari. You got to take care of it very well. You don't drive in the rain. You don't.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's people don't understand, because we have a nice set, and then I go back to my other ones because I don't want to deal with a nice set, because as long as it cuts, that's all I care about.
I gave somebody as a gift a really, really nice chef's knife, beautiful carbon steel. And I was like, this is carbon steel, it's not stainless. And they called me and they're like, it rusted. I was like, it's carbon steel, it's not stainless, right? So I think that really, for most people, it may not be that much of a shove to get them to where they get it, because they're not buying $1,000 knives, right? They're buying a knife off the shelf at Walmart. And although our knife is going to be more expensive than that, the utility should warrant the premium.
I just think here, I'll put an example. So we're in the lending industry. So you can talk about, I can do this loan, this loan, this loan, this loan on the same website, or
Yep.
I just recently separated out all my companies. So I have lending for a living is just reverse mortgage. So when you go to that website, that's all it is. My bets is just loansquad.com. You go there, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And then I have Source One Financial, which was the old one of my companies, and that's for my business people, and do DSCR loans, actual bank statement loans, those kind of things that you do business wise. And that way you know exactly where you go to. The problem is we try to say the same message to everybody and nobody hears it. You have to find out who your perfect client is, or what they call these today avatars. You got to know who that is and talk to that person. Doesn't mean you can't sell to other people, but you need to talk to that one person so they get it.
And we're working under the, I think, correct assumption that it could change. Like, I think the market will tell us a lot. The Kickstarter went well, but when all of a sudden we have knives, we're going to know where the demand is coming from. And if it's all hunters, or if it's all, because a lot of the outdoor guys said, this is great. Like, if I camp, I don't have to bring all kind of different knives for my field kitchen, and I can use it for whatever. We do have a sport one in our roadmap that has some functionality that would, be a good utility in the field. So I think this is, we were talking about like the constriction of being in a corporate America type job and being in a startup or something entrepreneurial, is what I like is we don't have to make a decision right now. We have to make sort of a strategic direction, but we don't want to overshoot the feedback that we're going to get. And there's really no need to be. We're going to hard launch, but you only have so much inventory. So
When are
we're
you
really going
launching?
to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
When are you launching?
We are in mid-March. We get our first shipment of knives that will meet our Kickstarter demand. We get our next shipment April, May timeframe, but we're putting in a large order right after we get the Kickstarter knives. So we should be able to fill our demand Jump Street at about April, May timeframe.
All right. So when can I get one ordered?
Well, we should be taking pre-orders in mid-April. My team is still working on that, but I will make sure that by the time this airs, that you know what that date is.
Yeah, no, I would like to get a knife. And I think
Oh
what
no,
you
absolutely. Well, there's something that we're looking at doing with working with podcasters and such, where we would love to offer listeners and viewers a discount and work with you on an affiliate type.
Oh, I appreciate that, but that's not. I just want a knife because I want to use it in the kitchen. Because here's the thing: is I got sent this wallet to do what? Because I don't do anything.
Right.
I don't like. Dude, yes, I have a lot of followers, but I'm not an influencer. I'm just a person. Right. But they sent me that, and would you do a thing on it? So I started using it. I was like, holy cow, I really like this wallet. This is, and because I've had, to be honest with you, I'm a To.Me kind of guy, expensive wallets and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I want it in certain places. Well, I'm telling you, this is perfect. Money clip, everything. It's exactly, I've had other ones that just didn't work right. And this one is amazing. And now I got to do an actual video on it. Maybe I'll just cut up what I did here, talking about it, because I've told a lot of people, if you need a new wallet, I would get this. If you don't want to carry everything, you just carry your cards and, your money. You have a little place for cash if you take cash, because I still like cash.
Right. My wife's got my kids' wallets like that, and they love them.
Yeah. Well, my kids are gone, so I don't have to worry about having cash anymore. Because I would have cash, and then my wife would go, oh, I don't have any money. Of course, you never have any cash. That's why you send them to me.
Right. Now, I still don't carry enough cash, but I will make sure that when we get one, or when we get our shipment, I'll reach out to you, because I would love to get you one.
Because here's another thing I'm thinking is, people like me who deal with mortgages like you did, if you deal with the veteran community, it would be a good housewarming gift. Because
100%.
I give out now cutting boards that say they're, the so-and-so family and name on them. They're amazing cutting boards, and everybody loves it so much that they won't even use it. They just put it up as a display. And then people ask them I used to do rugs, really nice rugs, but then nobody asked, where'd you get that rug? But we
actually have a specific cutting board as well that has a integrated bowl in the shape of the Nulu. So as you're cutting, stuff doesn't fly everywhere. And it has a slot for display as well. So the gift idea, that's another market that we're trying to figure out. Like, I had actually talked to a large mortgage company, and we were going in a great direction. They're like, it's a knife. There's too much liability. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, Cutco has been connecting with mortgage people for a long time.
Cutco's been around forever. Yeah.
I think the bigger you go, the more that they're going to be worried about something where someone cuts their thumb off or whatever.
I don't really know.
Right.
There's no liability.
You can't fix stupid, right? I mean,
yeah, you can't fix stupid. That's correct.
Right.
Doug, thank you so much for coming on the show. I had a really good time talking to you today. It was a great time.
You know what? And what I love is this is probably the most conversational one I've been on in a long time. And I love where it went, because I talk about my knife a lot. And I think there was a lot of really good information for vets, and that's my passion. So I really like that the conversation went there. And I like always finding a guy who's as committed to that community. So thanks what you do as well.
Oh, thank you. It's giving back. It's one of those things my wife always asked me why I do so many podcasts and everything. First, I did so many of them so I could get good at it. And second, and now I do it because I enjoy having conversations about us. I mean, helping us.
Right. No, I totally hear it. And I think, every time more people do this, it gets these young guys, and, hopefully some of them hear it. Right. And they're like, okay, these old guys aren't all the crusty old guys who tell them that they, we were tougher than you were. I don't think it's that anymore, but I think that's the vision.
But I think it's a different world now. We can connect and talk about the stuff that we couldn't talk about before, where you talked earlier on, where we have to go to these groups, these places to communicate with vets about things that are going on. Well, the way it is now, we don't have to do that. And we're all inclusive. Some of those places, they're not inclusive. You have to be a combat veteran, or you have to be foreign war. That whole thing that's what I think people don't like, is that part of it to a certain point.
Oh, I know. Listen, I totally agree with you. Because I was deployed for a certain amount of time and we were at war when I was at the academy, I actually qualified. I was surprised, right? So with that, I was guess fortunate that my time opened that door. But I totally hear what you're saying. But I think they've got to reinvent themselves too. You can't say we're going to be exclusive, but we want more people to join. It doesn't work. The math doesn't work.
Yeah, and the problem is, well, my buddy can't come who has issues because or whatever, because he wasn't during he didn't go to Korea during that period of time.
Right.
I mean, because that's, if you go to Korea as a deployment during a time of war, guess what? You're on. It works. It's
right.
Nothing going on in South Korea.
Right. Although it's always under the specter of something happening. That's one place I actually wish I had gone. It was supposed to be a great post.
My son's there.
Oh, is he? Does he like it?
Oh yeah, but he's ready to come home.
Right.
I mean, it's not, it's not the sandbox.
So. No.
And then it's like, don't ask for something you don't want to go to.
Right. Oh no, that's absolutely.
Yeah. Because too many people I know, because the first time that they were using all the reservists, those people got so messed up. And then I've talked to so many reservists who was over there more than active duty people.
To the sandbox, you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Time and country. Yeah. What we used to call time and country. Yeah. All right, Doug, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You, man, this was good. I'm glad we pulled it off after everything on what, Wednesday?
Yeah, don't run away, because I got something else I want to ask you before you go. But
no,
thanks
absolutely. I got to leave in like a half an hour to get a sandwich to my son.
That's all right. I just need a couple more minutes. All right. Again, thank you so much, Doug, and thank you all for being here today.